Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone present, and thank you, everyone, for joining us on a Thursday afternoon. Welcome to this exciting seminar that we're doing on digital signature for Digital India, brought to you by ET Legal World in collaboration with Zoho Sign. I'm thrilled to see actually the number of people that have joined today through the live stream as we explore how digital documentation, which includes Aadhaar-based e-verification, e-stamping, and AI-powered contract workflows, are reshaping India's business and legal landscape and what's in store for the future. But before we dive in, let me introduce our panelists who bring a wealth of experience across truly diverse industries. Firstly, and I go according to my screen, Rajiv Malik, who's the head legal at LG Electronics Noida Manufacturing. Ashwini Agarwal, head of ethics and compliance India at Stanley Black and Decker. Lakshika Joshi, global risk and compliance head contracts at Harvard Business Publishing. Gunjan Kandhari, senior compliance ethics advisor at Boeing. Zamir Nathani, Global General Counsel at DNEG, and Jayaprada J, Corporate Counsel Compliance at Zoho Corporation. Virtual round of applause to all the panel for joining. Now, here's a fun fact to set the tone. Did you know that since the introduction of Aadhaar eSign in India, over 200 million documents have been digitally signed? And if you put that up as wallpaper, that is enough to cover the Taj Mahal twice. In fact, the Indian government estimates that e-signatures can reduce document turnaround by up to 90%, which saves businesses millions annually on paper, courier, and storage costs. But digital documentation is far from more than just speed and cost savings. It empowers businesses by increasing accuracy, minimizing human errors, improves customer experience through instant processing, and offers unparalleled transparency with secure audit trails. It also seamlessly enables remote operations, which became almost a mandate post COVID, especially in a world that is increasingly reliant on hybrid and work from anywhere models. Now, globally, organizations are reaping these benefits in transformative ways. For instance, in the US, the healthcare sector uses digital signatures to expedite patient consent forms and inter-hospital documentation, cutting down waiting times dramatically. In Europe, multinational corporations like Siemens and Unilever leverage AI-enabled contract management for faster compliance reviews and risk mitigation across jurisdictions. Even in Australia, government agencies have adopted digital signing to simplify and speed up public tenders and licensing approvals. This sets a benchmark in citizen-centric digital governance. These examples also underscore the global momentum behind digital adoption and highlight the immense potential waiting to be unlocked in India as well. But beyond these efficiencies and cost savings, the adoption journey isn't without bumps. Legal questions still linger, and there are concerns about security, auditability, and let's be honest, convincing some traditionalists to ditch their pens requires a little more than good intentions. Because after all, who doesn't love scribbling their signature in their own personal style? In some cases, it's even considered a work of art. So, in the next hour, we'll unpack all this and more from the hard data and regulatory frameworks to real world stories of success and challenge across these diverse sectors. Our panelists will bring their unique stories and expertise, whether it's removing paper hurdles in electronic manufacturing, navigating legal trust in global publishing, or addressing the quirks of entertainment contracts that still demand a physical autograph. With that, I would like to introduce Jayaprada J, Corporate Counsel Compliance at Zoho Corporation, an expert in the field of digital documentation, to deliver the opening remarks.
Thank you, Nimit. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with such distinguished panelists, and I thank ET Legal World for hosting this discussion. So, at Zoho, as a corporate counsel, I've seen how technology and law are converging, not just to make processes faster, but to build the digital economy. So, if you take India's journey with digital signatures, I would say it has been remarkable. So if you take starting from the late 1990s and the early 2000s, where India was still heavily reliant on paper-based systems and processes. So if you take contracts, government filings, and even a simple task of opening a bank account, required a lot of extensive paperwork and physical verification. Now, recognizing this inefficiency, India enacted the Information Technology Act of 2000, which for the first time, gave legal recognition to electronic records and digital signatures. So when the IT Act of 2000 was first, passed, we initially had only USB token-based digital signature certificates, which again proved to be very cumbersome and not that user-friendly. So, the actual revolution, or rather a turning point in this industry, came with the Digital India mission in 2015, where they introduced Aadhaar based electronic signature, which brought secure PKI based authentication to the fingertips of millions of users. So now, if you take post Aadhaar based eSign, signing a loan agreement or onboarding a vendor, having a business agreement signed, it all takes just minutes instead of as opposed to days with the paper-based systems. So now the question of why India adopted digital signatures so decisively arises. So I see three reasons for that. First would be scalability, second would be the trust, and third would be efficiency. So given our population, paper based processes are not scalable and sustainable for the longer run. So, with digital signature giving online documents the same enforceability as that of paper based documents, it changes the contract turnaround time by over 80%. And introducing Aadhaar based e-sign is just going to increase the it just adds an additional layer of confidence and inclusivity to the document. So, and it is also noteworthy to point here that India has not evolved in isolation. So we have globally countries like the US, EU, and many more countries, moving towards their digital trust framework. So if you take US, for instance, they enacted the eSign Act and the UETA way back in 2000. And then we have the European Union, which had EIRS regulation that provides a common standard for electronic signatures and trust services across Europe. But I find India's approach to be unique because we've democratized digital signatures, moving them beyond corporate boardrooms to everyday citizens, MSMEs, and so on and so forth. So now we've moved from paper based to USB token to Aadhaar based. Now we are moving towards the next stage, which are AI based workflows. So under AI based workflows, documents can be drafted, reviewed, signed, stored, stamped, everything digitally. And the opportunity is enormous here. But we should also, note that our responsibility is also equally enormous. So we must ensure that the adoption remains inclusive, privacy is respected, and AI tools are governed responsibly. So to conclude my remarks, I would say digital signatures in India are no longer futuristic. They are the foundation of secure, compliant, and efficient workflows. So I look forward to sharing more such insights and also to learn from this esteemed panel today. Thank you.
I think that perfectly sets the tone. Thank you, Jayaprada. That digital contracts are no longer the future, like a lot of other technologies coming today, digital contracts are now here. But it's been a long journey getting here. Like many other digitization movements in India, it's been more of a personal journey of leaders as well, and also a question of trust, right? I'm going to first start off with that personal journey that the experts on this panel had. I'm going to throw that to Rajiv, and everybody else feel free to chip in, whether you agree or you disagree with Rajiv, and share your personal journey. So there's honestly no one right answer. Rajiv, over to you.
Thank you, first of all, ET Legal World for having me here, and thanks, Nimit, and thanks, Jaybrada, for setting the tone. And I now, if you are saying whether others are convinced or not, of course, I can say that for sure that everybody will be convinced with Jaybrada that that is the future. That is the digital signature is already here, and we have to follow it. But the still, still from the organization point of views and from the industry point of views, if we see the core challenge, which is generally the questions which the others are asking, still asking us whether it is legal, whether is whether it is secure also, or whether it is compliant also, right? But these are the basic three questions which still we need to take up when the layman is coming to us with when we are pushing for the e-signatures and other things. Like for example, electronics industry is having the basically unique set of compliance requirements also, from IPR to quality control certifications, and then we have a thousands of contracts with suppliers and vendors and the government contracts, right? And the normal thinking even today is that the wet signatures is legally valid and not otherwise. This is despite the fact that in fact the people are opening their bank accounts and getting their TDS certificates digitally signed, and they are filing their income tax returns also online, right? So this is despite the fact that when it's coming to the official work, they always feel no. I think that the physical signatures are still required, right? So if I personally feel that yes, I am pro digitization, that they are the legally recognized, but there has to be some system in place, that the system should be, because there is a fear, there's a fear of the data breaches, right? And if you will see them, even previously, the most of, if that any data is breached and leaked, then how you can safeguard it, right? This is the fear actually having. Now coming to the quantum computing is there, right? It will be so. How much encryption you can do for all these things? The quantum computing will come and it will overtake everything, right? The things will be very faster and faster. Uh, so breaches are only what the concern is there. But if I personally talk about that, yeah, there should be a system which can leave the temper evident digital audit trail. That is what it is required, and where we can provide the satisfaction to the user, that is that it is equivalent or it is better than the physical signing of the documents, which it should also ensure that the legally validity, because it is especially basically we have working in different jurisdictions also across the countries also. That also poses a question whether when we are signing cross border signing contracts, whether they can sign or not, they cannot sign. So, to be very frank, our industry is still following the longer route and very slower route of physically signing the supplier documents. And in fact, once we have tried to reach to them, or some are of course agreeing to it, but some are still following the older method. So we have to have the hybrid adoption, I can say, the route which we have taken as of now. Right. Another challenge, if you allow me, I can say that because
Absolutely.
suppose we are working with the different departments here. So all different departments are having their own system. They're working in silos, right? They have their own policies, and they have their own audits, and their own retention policies are there. So because they are working in silos, it is very difficult to have the streamlining all this system into one place. So these are the, I think, the challenges are there, and still people think that whether ROI will come or not once we will invest in these things. Over to
Absolutely.
Nimit.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv. I think that was a very interesting point that you also spoke about was, I think, the customer experience. You mentioned that, innovation and security versus the customer experience. Often when we're at organizations, we speak about smooth customer experience, and we often neglect the security or the compliance that may come with that. So when you talk about issues around digital signatures and issues around security, where you spoke about a solution with the audit trail. Ashwini, I'll pass it over to you. When we talk about a bottom-up approach about making this accessible to everybody, how important is marrying that customer experience with security and making sure that there is trust in the system?
Of course. Thanks for this question, Nitin. So see, the way I see that this is an advancement of the technology, and it's very important that it is made available to everyone, and the people can use this particular technology for the benefit of masses. So that is the first thing which is very important for any technology, that it starts contributing towards the human evolution. And I will just probably have very simple two examples around it, the way I see this from evolving it from bottom up approach. And I think Jayaprada also spoke about it in brief when she was introducing about it. Just take the example of opening a bank account. You means I still remember that you were required to fill up a complete form on this, and then this happens, then so many questions around it. I still remember that long form of SBI. I don't even know whether they are still asking customers to fill that form, but I know that there are
I
some
think they are.
banks. You can sit at the comfort of your home and you can still request the bank account opening, and you get the bank account opened with the Aadhaar verification, which is there, completely matching with the trust the way you asked about it. And so this is the way the democratization of the technology which is there. And about the loan disbursements as well, means the people are sitting at the remote locations of the country, and they are, and of course, loan is something which is helping the India to grow, which is helping the India to achieve its ambition of Viksit Bharat by 2047 as well. So that is the place where we are moving, and we cannot move ahead with the policies of yesterday in the future. So we have to have the policies which are taking us towards the towards the future. I'll take another example on this, which is about let's say the example of vendor onboarding in any organization. Often it is marred by the time, the way it takes in any organization to onboard the vendors, then to sign the contract. So this is something which I believe that all of us have gone through this, and we know about this particular thing. But with this particular digital signatures, whether you are located anywhere, you don't need to travel to anywhere to be able to sign this. And this is something which gives a clear kind of advantage for you to move ahead on this. So if I have to put this kind of thing in a very simple terms, I will say that digital signature is something which, from an organization point of view, from a business point of view, this is something which gives an efficiency to the organization. This is something which gives an speed to the organization in proceeding ahead to the next steps. But when I look at it from the customer perspective, I see it gives me convenience to them. It is something which is very much useful for them. And when I look at it from nation perspective, I find that this is something which gives an inclusivity in the nation. So this is win-win-win for the consumers, which is win-win-win for the businesses and for the nation. This is how I will put my views around it.
Win,
I
win, win
just want
indeed.
to
Yeah, please go ahead,
I
Raja.
just want to add here, Ashwani. On the lighter note, you have said it is very easy for to get the loan also, right? It is. I do agree with it. It's very easier to get the loan, but while you have to pay the loan, you have to still have to be stand in the queue for repaying the loan, right? That is still the
Right.
cumbersome process,
Which
right? Another
Yeah,
thing you have talked another thing you have talked about the Viksit Bharat, and I am dead sure that yes, we are going to be a Viksit Bharat, but it has to be a Surakshit Bharat also by 2047, right? Because of the cyber breaches and other things, it is really a concern. So, in any case, so we said that Viksit Bharat should include the Surakshit Bharat also.
If I may add to
yeah.
Rajiv, I completely agree with him. Like, we are on the right path, but I mean, there's still a gap in adapting digital signatures. The reason being, people feel it's not very secure, especially if you're from a non-technical background. It's really difficult to convince them that this is secure, your data is not going to go, or this is not another scam to lure money from your account or anything.
Right.
So we need to convince people that it is very secure and safe. So I think the key is lies there.
I think
Absolutely.
we
And I,
still like to have something which is physical in our hands, which we can see to it, and
yeah,
where we can put our signature, which are now autographed. Probably the point which you were making in the beginning, that who doesn't like
yeah,
to scribble their signature? So yes, that's
yeah.
right, and probably who doesn't like their signatures turned to the autographs. So I think that is how I would like to put
Yeah.
it.
And sometimes I've experienced the opposite. So if I in fact personal experience was I needed to apply for a loan and I didn't want to go to the bank, and I said that you have this e-signature option available, and they were like, no. Instead, what I'll do is I'll send my boy with the documents to your house, and they'll come to your house. tell you where there'll be a little highlighted mark with an X in wherever you need to sign, and you sign those and you send it back. So I think there's a mindset change that's
But this is
needed.
how
But
long? This is for how many years back you are talking about? Because now you
I'm
have
talking about 2025. I'm
approval.
talking about 2025, and this is a tier one bank. My
Oh, but
experience with it. But obviously, it's disappointing from a customer perspective as well. So it's not only that the customers are willing to change. There is enough customer, support behind this. But sometimes I guess we're so used to the comfortable idea of legality and trust that it's hard to when it involves our finances or something so personally important to us, it becomes harder to trust technology. As long as when you say something like chat gpt and ask it what you want to do, it's much easier. But building real trust through a digital infrastructure, through awareness campaigns, and bridging that knowledge gap is, I think, a longer process, especially in a country as digitally divided as India is. From there, I'd like Lakshika
Just want to
for you
add,
to join.
I just want to
Yeah,
add
sorry, go
one
ahead.
thing. I just
Go
want
ahead.
to add one thing. It's not only the technology part, it's also the mindset, like for
Hmm.
example, we had a very recent example 2 weeks back. There's a judgment of Kotak Mahindra Bank in Bombay High Court,
Hmm.
which says that digitally signed corporate guarantee or personal guarantee is a valid document. But the
Yeah.
sensitivity around these personal guarantee is so much for the banks that they probably insist on signing physical because they don't want somebody to come back and say, sorry, all right, this was a digital signature, I was not in India, and therefore, I can't own that. So I think there's a sensitivity on the mindset also, and I'm talking about nationalized banks, especially when the amount is very big. So, even tendering a judgment of Bombay High Court saying that, this will support
Yeah.
you is sometimes because they have their own processes, and as Rajiv
Yeah.
pointed out, audit, etc. These are all the number of items which they will present
Yeah.
in the defense for not signing digitally. That's
No,
my
no,
submission.
absolutely. That's a great point. And that again leads us back to where does trust begin? Even if a Bombay High Court judgment is not enough to convince a company, does it then need to come from the legislature? Does it need to go all the way to the Supreme Court? Because we are a litigious society. Even if there's a judgment against us, we will still file a case in any case, which is where again I will bring Lakshika in on this. Legal validity, trust building, and then the advantages of digital workflows. Also, the difference uh, in 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 acceptance cross border, right? Where if you're working, especially in its multiple jurisdictions, how do you sort of deal with the differences in acceptance of digital documentation? How are you sort of implementing digital documentation in such an environment?
Thank you, Nimit, and thank you, eDworld, for having me here. I think, Nimit, to answer your question, I will also pick up from what some of my previous speakers have been talking about. I want to just, for all of us to recognize that there is something beyond just digitization of the contracting process that we're talking about. Through the digital movement, or let's say the way the world is headed, we are actually becoming one world, whereas laws have always been very jurisdictional in nature. Every country has a specific requirements, whether it is with respect to their data privacy laws, whether it is with respect to their security systems, or if it is even, and not just countries, then you come down to the level of every industry has a varying level of compliance standards that they impose, which will be very different from healthcare to real estate to, let's say, finance, banking industry that we spoke of earlier, and so on. So there are multiple layers that we are to consider in sort of trying to understand where these challenges are coming from, beyond, of course, just the factor of trust. And the trust factor also sort of segues from these layers that are inbuilt into this discussion, because you have laws which are extremely oriented for a particular country or a particular sector in that country, and therefore the standards are variable. Just to take an example very simplistically, if we were to look at three regions, India, US, and let's say EU. In India, of course, Jayaprada mentioned we have the IT Act of 2000, and we have two mechanisms whereby we have digital signatures. One is the digital signature, the certifying authority, DSC, and the other is the Aadhaar, the OTP biometric linked e-signing that we have. In Europe, again, as per their regulation of 2014, there are three types of digital signatures that we have. There is the SES, which is the simple electronic signature. Then there is the advanced electronic signature. And then there is the qualified electronic signature, which is the most trusted one and also globally acceptable. This is issued by EU Trust service providers. And of course, it has the same weightage as wet ink across the EU. Now, each of these types have different legal weights, if I may say. And then when we move to US, of course, they had their eSign Act of 2000, and they work with DocuSign, Adobe, and many of these. Now, if you look at the level of sort of challenge it creates, and you look at the strength and the weaknesses also, I would say the strongest in terms of security, trust, is the QES from the EU. And the weakest, from a global transactional perspective, I'm telling you, is the DocuSign. But if you look at purely at the ease of doing business, at the ease of creating no hurdles for consumers or end users, DocuSign probably will be the simplest, right? But then, when you look at it from a trust and a security perspective, it would be probably the weakest. And therefore, what is happening is you have, I operate at a global level, and I see that there is a variance in the level of trust, in the level of ease of operation across jurisdictions when we move from or outside India. Of course, we have a great system through whether it is DSC or the e-signing through Aadhaar, because there are levels of authentication, and these are Aadhaar being also biometric level. But the problem with that is it is only limited to contracts within the country. For any cross-border contracts, we do, and you still need to rely on a dual signature approach, because Aadhaar will not work outside India. If you're working with a US company, you will still need something like a DocuSign, or you could fall back on wet ink. Again, that is preferred. Similarly, a European really high standard of QES, which is the qualified electronic signature, again, works very well within the EU, but the minute you take it outside the EU, let's say for a US contract or something, will not work. It is extremely trusted, very high guarded on security
Lakshika,
levels.
sorry for cutting you off. Just small thing I wanted to ask, maybe for our audience to understand better. When you say one is a really high standard, what does that mean?
On the trust, because it is issued by EU trust service providers, so that's a third party, and it has high levels of security. That's what I meant by, so because they have these three levels and all are acceptable, but in terms of the legal weight attached to a specific kind of signature, that is almost equivalent to our Aadhaar OTP based dual verification kind of signature that is coming from the EU region. But again, outside the EU, you still have to, for international contracts and global contracts where parties are based in various countries, rely on other mechanisms, because that is not accepted outside. And it also creates challenges in terms of speed or user sort of friendliness, because it may not be as easy or to set up as a DocuSign. So those are sort of things that we need to balance. Now, add to that a layer of, as lawyers, when we look at or work in a multi-jurisdictional sort of environment, we also look at many other things beyond just the mode of signing or which e-sign are we using. We also look at things like, is my contract being governed by Indian laws, right? Or am I going to work in a contract situation where the governing laws are EU laws, or are these US laws? In which case, it sort of then links directly to the mode for e-sign that you would like to choose or prefer for that contracting. In a multi-jurisdictional situation, as I was talking earlier, it's usually a dual execution strategy, because something may be very specific for a region, but you will still need to ramp it up with either wet or another mode of eSign to layer it up to make it equally sort of acceptable in other countries as well. Now with that, I'll share an interesting anecdote with you from a previous organization where I worked. This was COVID days. And every company was looking to sort of get as much business as they could, because the world had shut down. Everybody was inside their houses, not just in India, US, Europe, everywhere. And I'm talking of the very strict lockdown days, where people even didn't want to venture or open their doors to see if everything's all right outside the deck or not. But in those days, we were doing a lot of business, thanks to, of course, the contract workflows being totally digital, technology enabling people to work from any region of the world. Now, we encountered an interesting situation where one of the customers was based in a country where they wanted a dual mechanism on top of the DocuSigns of the world for signatures, and they asked for wet signatures. And our signing authority was a person based in a European country, and that country was at that point under very, very strict lockdown. So we actually asked our authorized signatory if we could send the papers over via some means and deliver it to their doorstep, if the signatory would be kind enough to at least also sign in wet ink. And it was very interesting. It was a very large deal. The company was eyeing for this business for many, many years, and we had closed it, we had signed it over DocuSign, and now the customers were chasing us before they could release the first payments to get a wet paper sign from us. The authorized signatory said, no, even if you get it delivered at my doorstep, I'm not going to open the door to receive that document. And we were stuck just because we couldn't get wet ink signatures on that paper. So things like those also come up when you work in a cross-jurisdictional sort of environment where you have to look at dual mechanisms for e-signatures. And that was a big learning. Of course, later we then had added to our list a few more authorized signatories in various countries and sort of diversified the portfolio so that we don't end up with that kind of an issue ever again. But these are some practical issues that keep coming up when you're talking about e-signatures in a global, multi-jurisdictional sort of environment.
Absolutely. And I'd love to hear from you, Jayaprada. What do you think about these different standards that exist and all the different requests that one such example that Lakshika gave, but around the world there'll be many such weird requests for different standards of trust that people have in e-signatures and documentation. So Jayaprada, is there are organizations like yours or otherwise generally, is there an international sort of consensus working towards standardization of e-signatures that will make it easier to do this cross-border?
Nimit, I wish it was as easy as you had said, but unfortunately today we don't have anything like that. But where we face challenge predominantly is in convincing our customers that even if you don't have the highest, like as Lakshika pointed out, the qualified electronic signature, it's not always necessary to have that for every use case. Like you can even use a simple electronic signature to sign an agreement, but the customers they have a very how do I put it? It's a myth among the customers that you need to have the highest standard of electronic signature. Only then is a particular type of signature valid. If you don't have that, then your signature is not valid. What all of us, or rather what everybody as a customer or as a user of digital signature has to understand is that even the basic electronic signature, or rather even an image of your signature, you attaching an image of your signature would still count as a valid signature, provided your signature provider has a certain layer of security to it. That's all. It's not always necessary that you will have to opt for a higher type of
What is this
electronic
certain
signature.
layer of security? Could you explain that a little more?
Like
What is that?
yeah, probably like we have PKI based authentication, or you have a multi-factor authentication added to your signature, even if it is a simple electronic signature. Just having an OTP option at the time of signing will create it, add an extra layer and bring it to the next level of accepted form of electronic signature or an advanced electronic signature, so on and so forth. So we can, these type of electronic signature are still enforceable in court, or the only added work to them is that you'll have to probably submit the audit trail, and an additional evidence is like audit trail and when it was signed, your IP kind of things, that's all. So otherwise all types of electronic signatures are actually enforceable in courts. That's a myth that I really want to bust by using this opportunity. So we have had challenges more in convincing our customers to opt for even a lesser type of an electronic signature for their use case. Like it depends. Like if you want to find sign, say for tax filing, you might need a highest form of electronic signature just to be more safe and given the sensitivity of the document. But for a business contract, like a sales agreement and all, it's not really necessary. So people need to understand which standard to use for which type of signature as well. So that's another
Also,
experience.
I wanted to add one more point, Nimit, which is, with e-signatures. So when we were all in the world where we were physically signing things, everything was obviously very well trusted, and we knew only if that person is available would have signed the signature in a certain way. This also circles back to your point about some people treating that signature almost as a work of art, right? Because it was so unique to you. It was almost like your trademark, which only you had the rights to use. Now, with digital signatures or with these signatures, and I'm just sort of highlighting a practical thing that we've seen, I'm sure others also as legal professionals have seen, is people also, the people you're equipping with those digital signatures need to understand that this is almost equivalent to your own hand signatures or wet signatures, because there is a tendency, many times I've seen, with folks who are extremely busy to sort of delegate the e-signing to an executive assistant or to someone else, and that sort of creates not that it is right or wrong, I'm not commenting on that right now, but that adds another level of complication to the whole thing, because then you're not really mindfully applying your signature to a piece of paper. And if for that reason at a later point you want to be able to deny or not accept that you had attested to a certain contract or a piece of paper, I think that should be held or seen as a whole with respect to the facts and circumstances. For example, there should not be just audit trail of the signature per se, but also if there were mails or communication exchanged leading up to the stage of signature, what does that say? So whenever we are talking about disputes, in any case, whether it is on signature or not having signed something, it's never about only that document. It's also about a lot of evidence that is gathered around what were the facts and circumstances that led up to the stage of that signature, which should be able to then establish whether or not there was intent for that person to have signed that piece of paper.
No, absolutely. I think we're quite far away from established even a judicial trend in this direction. But I mean, like
I
Sameer pointed
just
out,
want to add up
go
here.
ahead.
And
Go ahead.
see, the problem is that your physical signature, you have a stamp paper, you have signed it physically, you have the thing in hand, and there's an assurance that this is enforceable, right? Now, what Jaya spoke and Lakshika also spoke, if you see our judgments also, we have some fantastic judgments in favor and there are some fantastic judgments against also, because courts also want procedural compliance. Now, this is the layer of that procedure, which normally people think is a questionable thing, whether, this will be enforced or not. Like, I'll give you one example. There was a case of Shakti Bhog Foods, where, the court said that electronic documents and digital signatures are admissible under the Evidence Act, provided they are compliant under the IT Act. Now this opens something for people saying that, all right, what is that compliance which is required? And if something goes south, what happens to my chair? Okay. You have one more judgment which I have here is Trimex International versus Gale. In that the court said e-sign documents hold the same validity as physical contracts. And then there's a caveat which says when mutual assent is clear. So now this is a question mark saying that the physical documents, at least I can go to the court saying that this guy signed in front of me. Now this judgment says everything is valid, but you have to still establish whether there was a mutual consent. So these procedural questions
Yes.
then add a layer to my factor saying that if it questions the enforceability, what's the loss to the company which happens? A genuine contract, just because it has gone to a domain of some procedural lapse, is now questionable as not enforceable. So I think that layer we should clear it off.
And adding to what Zamir was mentioning, see, even now, I think if you look at individual contracts, for example, wills and testaments, it requires witnesses to sign on and things like those. I think there is a tendency to still rely so much more on physical signatures, because you wouldn't want anyone to question the validity of that document at some point in time. Of course, we are talking beyond business transactions only, and therefore I brought this. So you have to look at the problem of e-signing, or the challenges rather, not problem, which expand beyond just business transactions with personal, let's say you mentioned loan application, right? Which is an individual sort of loan application against a larger bank. So anyways, in the eyes of a court of law, you are a David versus Goliath situation. So they would want to be extremely careful about, yes, Nimit was the one who signed it off, and probably they were being extra cautionary about things in that sense. So I think yeah,
So go ahead, finish your point.
No, that's what I meant. So look
I wanted
beyond
to make
also
a point
business
saying that
transactions.
these judgments, if they are very clear, like for example, compliant under the IT Act, if the judgment would say that anything which is Aadhaar based authentication, like Jaya said, if that is compliant, then that confidence is there that whatsoever the situation is there, I will have an Aadhaar based authentication, and therefore the e-signature is compliant, nobody can dispute. Instead of the judgment saying if it is compliant under the IT law, I don't know under which section somebody can challenge. That's a perception.
No,
Number
that's
two,
definitely
when you
true.
speak
Yes.
about that these digital signatures are valid, subject to establishing whether there was a mutual consent. If the court says that once you apply a digital signature, mutual consent is implied, that would give me more confidence to imply that. So those sort of things, basically, I think these judgments were also dated to a certain points. I think will grow as Aadhaar-based authentication comes. That will be a great initiative on my, according to me.
Absolutely. I think that we'll come to a question for that later, where I want to discuss, does the industry come first and then sort of the judiciary and legislation follow, or does the judiciary and legislation sort of prepare a roadway for which the industry can move forward? But we'll come to that. But before that, Gunjan, you've been sitting quite quietly in a corner of my screen here. So I'd like to bring you in because I know that the industry that you work in currently and the work you've done in the past, there's been a lot coming back to cross-border compliance and cross-border experience with digital documentation. I'm going to sort of let you share your personal journey with cross-border compliances in the way Lakshika did as well, and understand that in an industry where compliance is sort of critical, right? How important is building that trust, and how far are we in our journey to building a trust in digital documentation and digital signatures?
Sure. Thanks, Sumit. Good to connect and with you and all the panelists, and thank you for ET Legal for this opportunity. So yeah, I think I'll start with very personal journey, and I'm sure many of you will be able to relate, and Jayprada also just connected with that initially. So being the CS, when I very freshly qualified and I joined a certain organization, where you file certain forms with the regulatory authorities, with ROC. So That's when I heard, you are doing it so easy, because at that point of time when I joined, it was all digital. It just started with the digital signature. And I used to hear from other CS, how we used to go to the ROC office and we had to stand in a line, submit a challan, and get this form submitted. So yeah, I totally feel lucky to that extent that when this journey started for digitization specifically for this country, we all entered at that point of time. It was just a starting, like Jayaprada also mentioned, that this is a foundation. So we already crossed that, I would say. And yes, what I feel that we need is consistency. Like I think Lakshita touched or Zamir touched on that. Like, few cases would be where digital signature or Aadhaar based signatures would be allowed. But let's take a very simple example. If we have to go buy a house, okay, real estate, and we go to any tehsil office, there we still stand there, get a picture clicked, and we have to sign as well. So the consistency that the government needs to bring, I think, is very important in that regard. Now, coming to the cross-border compliance, and be it aerospace or I would say any industry for that matter, the basis or the intent behind any cross-border compliance would be that we need to ensure that we are covered from legal risk standpoint, from ethical risk standpoint, and also from the financial accountability standpoint as well. So it can be and many elements that we may have, like I would say some sectors like manufacturing would definitely rely heavily on, or would really need to have good procedures for import export compliances that we need to comply with, because we are into that kind of sector. While government at present, be it in India or maybe in other countries, will accept our submissions with digital signatures when I have to export something or when I have to import something. But what about that particular company sitting in a particular jurisdiction? Again, I will come to the mindset that we have touched on. How are they bringing that up? And also about that particular country. Do they recognize digital signature the same way that our country is recognizing? Or if there is a difference? And also, Lakshita mentioned that, maybe some mindset would be that, no, I want a wet signature. Doesn't matter what you are, actually adopting. So I think all those things come into picture. And yes, challenge definitely comes when we have varying regulation. So I would say that what we need to do, one is definitely consistency from the governments, what we are doing. Secondly, the internal controls also, because at times, even if we adopt this technology, how is it that we are supervising? How is it that we are monitoring? How are we ensuring ourselves that this particular document is authenticated? I mean, it is authentic, authentic in nature. And so, how are we assuring ourselves as a company as well?
Understood. Thank you.
I
And I think, yeah, please, Rajiv, go ahead.
I just on a lighter note, because it's a very interesting way of herself showing that she's the youngest in the panel, because she said that when she joined as going to ROC on a digitally, and I do remember that when I passed my company secretary of CS, I was going for even the registration of charges, I was going to the ROC office. So it's I really compliment you for such a remark, interesting remark.
Thank you. It wasn't intentional.
In
Okay.
fact, just to add a
Good.
point to
Yeah.
what Gunjan said, even on the judgment side, so I said about two judgments where there is if and caveats. Even there was a judgment of Vedanta Aluminium, which when Gunjan was speaking about the points, that judgment says that email exchanges between the parties tantamount to contract if the intention of the party seems to be clear that there was an intention to contract. Now, if you have all the judgments with if and caveats and mutual consent and all that, normally the reliability on the digital signature will go. Now, if you have a judgment which says if the parties intended to contract, now on intention, I'm sure both side lawyers will have a full field day of citing 10 judgments each on what could be the intention, and you will be there in 2 years in courts of law just to prove whether there was an intention or not intention, and therefore, things will not crystallize. I think those kinds of judgments would drive in a certain direction where there is a certainty which is given, saying that email exchanges between the parties would
Yeah.
amount to tantamount to contract. Or if the judgment says electronic records and digital signature would amount to admissibility under the Evidence Act as well as the IT Act. Or the last one will imply that mutual consent is implied the moment you put a digital signature. I think that will give us a lot of faith in getting ahead on
Yeah.
the digital signature side. That's
I
the only
think
submission, and we have live judgments in front of us. So we have to just move on to the next part of it and make it more affirming.
I think I can agree to the admissibility part of it under the Evidence Act, but if you talk of consent, I think India and most of the common law countries always said even oral contracts are valid, but we still put out everything in writing. So that's a really, really long run debate, and we can endlessly sort of talk about that. So that's not going to settle anything much. But yes, if
Correct.
we,
So that's the comparison. Now today you
yeah.
have a physical document signed in front of you, and there's evidence and there is witnesses, etc. Obviously, it becomes slightly easier to prove that there was a consent to sign it than a digital signature, where most of the time, sometimes the digital signature are also not with you and it's with some other departments and somebody is putting on. So it's basically implying the certainty where I sign a digital document and it will be upheld by the courts of law and it's enforceable is the only guarantee which the corporates expect, is the bottom line.
I think we should go back to what Jayaprada said, that most contracts, even if simply digitally signed, are enforceable. I think all these ifs come from litigious positions generally, where one party may not agree with the way the contract has sort of played out, as we see in India more often than not. It comes from litigious positions. And I was once on a slightly tangential note. I was once speaking to a senior, a retired justice of the Supreme Court about this particular thing where, and in a couple of judgments, I think like, why do we use if? And why do we use these caveats where you make a definitive statement and then you say, but if this has happening, if this, they're like the art of writing a good judgment comes from the fact that you give the superior judge or the next judge in that order the ability to overturn it without really challenging your view. So that is why you write the if. So
Also, you
then
have to keep
the
the professionals alive, right? There has to be
yeah,
lawyers, there has
yeah,
to be enough billing
yeah.
to have them
It gives a
sustain the
face-saving
profession.
way. It
No,
gives
no.
the
Also,
other judge a sort
Jaya,
of easy, respectful way to get out of to
no,
overturn your judgment.
but Jaya Prada is absolutely right. In fact, the first debate which used to happen on digital signature is that whether a scanned signature is valid. That was the
Yeah,
part. I mean,
yeah.
though we started from those days, and then we have now landed to other authentication. But point is that what Jaya says is that any document which is signed is legally admissible document. That's the intent of the Information Technology Act. We are celebrating
Hmm.
Silver Jubilee 25 years of IT Act. I think we should now be firm on the digital signature.
Yeah. Ashwini, I want to bring you in here. You spoke about Viksit Bharat and you spoke about ease of access. This issue of enforceability, I don't think when you talk about it, when you talk about common everyday business contracts or everyday business arrangements, right? Bringing the issue of enforceability there may be a sort of large scale problem, not an individual scale problem. Do you see any solutions, or how do you see going forward our country giving access and reducing the knowledge gap in digital signatures to everyday businesses?
Yeah, the way I look at it, that there should be 100% clarity on this, because the kind of ifs and buts, the way they are coming into it, and I believe that's the place where legislation should step in, and it should clarify the things, because
Hmm.
we have a vision for 2047. The way Prime Minister said it in his Independence Day speech as well, he was forcing a lot on that particular thing. So, and you just take the example of Startup India program, which was started in 2016, January 2016. And when it was started, we had around 500 startups which were registered with the Department of DPIIT. Can you guess how many would be there now? By now, it's been around 10 years. It's it's around 187,000 of startups which are registered as of now. So which makes it around 48 startups getting registered almost every day, including Saturdays and Sundays. So we just see the kind of powerhouse which we are driving towards the Viksit Bharat, and it needs to be supported by these kind of solutions and the technologies which can take us to the next stage of the Viksit Bharat. Because we cannot go with the paper files to the Viksit Bharat of 2027. We need to have the complete technology which is supporting us, which is enabling the ease of doing business in not only in the organization but for the individuals as well whenever they are working. And we have shown it in the past. You just take the example of COVID application which was launched during the time of COVID, and Aadhaar authentication was used to the complete perfection. You can just see the kind of results which were available. Everyone had their own certificates of vaccination. So this is the democratization of the technology, and it needs to be supported with the legal guidance, with the legislation, so as people can move towards the next steps of its implementation and make a real impact on the lives of the people, how they are changing towards their lives. So this is how I see this. Hope it answers the points.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think it
Actually,
leads us. Sorry, go ahead, Rajiv, please.
actually, when you are talking about Viksit, I'm saying when we are talking about the Viksit Bharat, the ESG is also very important. Government is also focusing on ESG. And this aspect, even a small e-sign, right? Although a very small step, but it has a contribution towards the greener planet. That's I would like to say.
And I think that's again, that also fits into the next thing that I want to discuss, which is essentially who takes the lead in large scale adoption, right? Is it like Ashwini pointed out, is it executive might, as we saw with the Covin app, where we used existing infrastructure to just sort of push that app through, and or is it legislative changes? Is it the judiciary, or is it just businesses doing what businesses do best? Like, and I open this to the panel.
I think it's a business actually decides first of all, because there's a business needs, because things are going forward. Yes, of course, legislator is coming in helping us in way, and judiciary comes later on, I suppose. Depends upon others'
Okay.
views.
Sure, go ahead. I open this to the
I
panel.
kind of edge on what Rajiv said, because businesses set the trends and legislature tries to regulate it. Judiciary tries to regulate what businesses do, and show them the right way to do things. So I guess they go hand in hand. If yeah.
I think
Awesome.
my view is that law is pretty clear. I mean, there is a validity to it. Number two, if we can get rid of that affidavit which has to be filed in case you sign any digital document, is too much expectation, because I think we should just give that comfort of a physical signature and digital signature parallelly. Number two, if we have certainty of judgments, uh, because like I said, on certain judgments of if, there are also certain judgments which have been against it. I have a list of judgments. One of National Insurance Company versus Swift, the Swift account which we use for foreign transfer. It says digitally signed bank guarantees are invalid where physical stamping is legally required. So then you have a stamp duty issue. You have Negotiable Instruments Act. Certainty of judgment. So law is pretty clear. We should ease out the process of that affidavit and everything and bring the comfort level to physical signature and certainty of judgments. I think these are the comforts which the corporates will look. We are in for digital signing because that reduces a lot of gap. If you see the new age softwares which are also coming up in contract management software, it's about buying your online stamp papers, vetting your agreements online and digitally signing it. Best purpose served. That's where we are moving for Viksit Bharat. But we are only looking that there should not be an enforceability question, because then that jeopardizes the interest of the corporates. That's the intent and the certainty we are looking at.
Gunjan, Lakshika?
Yeah, I think as much as, innovation is being brought by the businesses, or I would say startups at this age, or maybe the other corporations, legislation does come maybe hand in hand, or maybe a little later, or maybe before that. I think very important point is we also need to think about the infrastructure that we need to, in picture, because at this age, when we talk about digitization, or mostly what we have as social media as well, it is so easy to do some sort of impersonification, or identity theft, which is like very common these days. So to build that kind of trust among people, we really need to bring up that kind of infrastructure which can emerge into the cyber security or the information security measures. So I think it should really speed up with whatever kind of innovation or legislation we are bringing into picture.
Sure.
I think business will do what they want to do and what they have been doing, which is to aid business and make, they're here to do business. Legislation definitely aids in that. I am thinking even beyond legislation, it could be regulatory measures to expedite certain things, or executive orders to expedite certain things. And then I'm thinking even beyond that. What is that is we need to also think about trainings and promotions. When we're talking about ease of doing business, when we're talking about digital India, a lot of this framework probably has so large businesses are adopting, or they have already adopted, but there is also a need to get a lot of others into the fold, which will need some amount of training, talking about it, education about it, how it works, what are the safeguards, what are the guardrails, what are the security measures, and things like those. And a lot of work needs to be done around that if we really want to sort of become paperless in that
I
sense.
think absolutely. I think a good example here would be the sort of GPay, phone pay movement where everybody was, really afraid at one point, especially in India, of keeping or transferring their money digitally. But it became sort of everybody's act. You couldn't avoid it, right? Today, you can't avoid it anymore. You can't even if you go to tier two, tier three cities, you go to towns, right? I come from a very small town in Madhya Pradesh called Morena. It's very small, and even there,
Very well
everything is
known for
digital.
its gajak.
Very well known for its gajak as well as its dacoits. Uh,
Yes. We're
and
talking of the good things here and the sweet
Yeah,
things.
yeah. So even there, the penetration of digital finance has been tremendous. And so I think an important aspect, but at the same time, there's also that many more scams, right? So many more scams through digital finance, through GPay, through PhonePe. People are getting scammed because of their lack of knowledge, right? Because of their lack of privilege. So, Jayaprada, I open this to you now before we go on to some questions. I think the last point that everybody made pretty much aligned around a lack of infrastructure, easing access, and making it a more reliable, sort of large scale product. I leave to you as the industry expert on where we are currently in that dream.
Yes, Nimit, thank you for this. So I'll kind of continue from where all of us have left the conversation. So it has been very apparent from Zamir, Lakshika, and Gunjan's statements that the laws across the states or the practices across the states are not very uniform. So when you talk about interoperability and uniform standards, that's where the gap lies actually in India. So if you take stamping laws, for instance, e-stamping as a concept itself is not recognized in all the states of the India. Only
Correct.
certain states recognize e-stamping. So if a person has to, say a loan agreement, he wants to, sign it, he will sign it digitally. And then for stamping, if he signs it in a state where e-stamping is not ideally recognized, then he'll have to go and get the stamping done physically. So there is a hybrid workflow here. So if it has to be entirely user friendly, I of course agree with Sami that we should have both wet ink and a digital signature option to the users. Yes, but if a user is opting digital signature, I'm pretty sure he wants the entire workflow to be digital and not switch between physical and digital. So that there is again a lacuna here. So and when you take there are also still a lot of documents like wills, real estate documents that cannot be digitally signed in India. You will have to, like, the law explicitly states that you will have to physically sign them. So the vetting is mandatory for such documents. So when you take the same instance globally, we are, especially after COVID, countries are moving towards digitizing their entire process. So if you take notarization, a simple task of notary, getting your documents notarized, it cannot be done online today in India. But if you take the case of US, they are the pioneers in remote online notarization, drawn in short, wherein almost 40 states have adopted e-notarization, where you will just have to go get on a video call, and they verify the authority verifies your ID, and the entire video call session is recorded, it is tamper proofed, and it is also added to your audit trail, and things get done easily. So instead of going and searching for a notary, convincing them, paying them, this becomes very easy. You get it done in probably under an hour. So this is again, when you take e-witnessing, for instance, it's again, UK is the pioneer for e-witnessing, wherein if even for business agreements, we require witnesses for certain agreements. So if we have to affix witness signatures, usually parties prefer for vetting signatures. But if we follow similar to what we are following for e-notarization, if we follow a similar route for e-witnessing as well, again, it can be done. So again, we can avoid a hybrid workflow here when digitize witnessing and notarizing agreements online. So that said, even if you take US, or not even US or UK, even if you take closer to home, UAE also has something called UAE pass, which is similar to Aadhaar in India. So they digitize signing and notarizing online entirely through UAE pass. So this is again another example that India can take inspiration from. So it's not like India doesn't have enough examples, Nimit. So we are moving in the right direction. The movement is slow, the adoption is slow, but if you ask me, the technology is already there. You will just have to improve the adoption, and the practice is what is lagging behind. So I would say for India, the road ahead would be having a uniform national framework, especially in cases like stamping, registration, and expanding it. And also India should expand the scope of digital signature to real estate agreements, POAs, and things like that. And again, we'll have to work on the interoperability between jurisdictions. For that, I guess all the world leaders have to come together and try for some convention or anything wherein we bring in some uniformity. We are all moving towards uniformity because people, as Lakshika had pointed out earlier, people consider Europe's type of qualified electronic signature as the standard form, and they take inspiration from it, like how we take inspiration for privacy laws from GDPR. We are taking similarly inspiration for electronic signature laws from eIDAS from Europe. So I guess we are all moving in the right direction, but as I said earlier, the movement is pretty slow. And if I have to give you another classic example, it would be affidavits. So, affidavits we can digitally sign, but then you'll have to take an oath for that affidavit. Now, for that, again, a
That you
physical
lose the
presence
point.
is
You lose the point
exactly.
of
No,
that.
the
I use
question
the
is
point.
that you're right, because if I'm signing something Aadhaar based and I'm authenticating that, why should I sign an affidavit for oath? I'm not doing it for physical, and
Precisely.
therefore
I have judgments. I
so these
the,
are age-old
yeah,
laws. Basically, it was done at a time of
Yeah.
IT Act 2000. It was brought in.
correct.
I think we'll require some amendment to that.
Yeah.
Lakshika, you gave an example of UAE, for example. So I was a director in a company. Singapore, I was a director. Everything was digitally signed, and we never thought at any point of time any of the documents will be unenforceable. What's the general feedback you get in India? Because for corporates, even 10% of enforceability question is a big question for us because there are high value transactions. What's the natural, most number one problematic feedback you get on not adopting to this?
Jaya, I think that was for you.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. Um,
Is it unenforceability, which is your prime question, which comes from the clients, or is it
actually,
something else?
no. Predominantly, they are worried about enforceability, and this is not just in India. Actually, India, we don't get the question of enforceability. It's more about the workflow and where the use cases where we can use the documents. But enforceability question rises outside India. Actually, people are more worried about enforceability outside India than people in India because the awareness on the types of digital signatures and their standards are more outside India when compared to Indian customers, is our observation so far.
In
I can tell
corporates, we are
you.
all passionate about e-signature. I mean, for me, the software
Yeah,
which I said, for me, buying online stamp papers, vetting it online, and signing it digitally is the best case scenario, because then my
correct,
database also is accordingly created, and then I am able to have the analysis also. It's the best case scenario for the corporates. It's just that
correct.
enforceability which comes up, and then there are certain judgments in
Mhm.
favor and not in favor, which
Favor,
creates
exactly.
a mindset saying that, whether we should take that risk or not.
See, also you can address the enforceability problem by signing in counterparts, if you ask me frankly. Because see, if you're it's going to be a cross-border agreement, let them sign in using a DAC that is valid in their country, and
Mhm.
let us sign an agreement using a certificate that is valid in our country, and that will be satisfy
Those are
the
the three
enforcement.
features which I saw. Like, for example, I come right now from entertainment industry. So we have a
Yeah,
practice of signing physical. I want Salman Khan, for example, to physically sign. That's been a practice that, actors sign it
That's
because,
good also.
You have
because
Good
Salman
number
also.
Khan's
one,
autograph. Then.
yeah,
Yes.
so number one probably is because high stake money is involved. Number two, there's a copyright involvement in that. Number three, there's a global exploitation rights which is involved. And therefore, there is an industry practice. Number two, what happens is that sometimes, like Amazon Prime, for example, also started with a practice saying that, when we sign up somebody, we'll sign it digitally, but we'll send across a hard copy to you for signature for good records.
Mhm.
These things have started coming up. So, these are two things which have been there. Now, cross border, if you see the issues which are coming up, is that your digital signature in India is has a certain standard, and that should be acceptable internationally also, as you rightly pointed out. So these are prime issues we have been seeing. But I think Aadhaar based authentication is one of the best things which is
India
nearly
has.
equivalent
Correct.
to
Okay,
the
we're
US
almost into
standards
our
over there.
Q&A time. So Rajiv, you had put your hand up a while ago, so I'm going to let you have the last word here before we take some questions from the audience.
If you can permit me, I can just sum up all this discussion in a small poem
Yeah,
in a
please go
poetic
ahead.
manner, right?
We would love
So
that.
a pen once ruled the paper page. Now bytes and codes define the age. A click, a key, a sign secure. The future of trust is digital pure. Then why chase the courier, waste a tree, when a single click can set you free? Ink may fade, but code will last. The paper age is in the past. The paper age is in the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
That is very nice. On that wonderful note, thank you to all the panelists. I think quite a lively discussion. A lot of diverse views, a lot of divergent views, which we love. Anybody with any questions? Else, we can continue on our merry conversation for another 10, 15 minutes. But if
Lakshika
there are any,
is representing Harvard Publishing. Lakshika, when I filled up my form for Harvard, it was just putting an initial on the form, and that's an undertaking and admissible under the US law. I think we should move on to that particular age from the government side also.
US
I think
works
that
on an
due,
honor system anyways, so for
correct,
most of their
correct, correct.
filings.
I think we
just
should
checking
be
if you
so.
all should just, sorry, I'll just take a sec. I just want to understand how we're going to be seeing the questions. This is live stream. If the operator could please put it onto the chat, I would be happy to take those questions. Sorry, go ahead, Zamir and Lakshika.
No, what I was saying from a corporate standpoint, we are just looking at certainty because we are all for in favor of that e-signature. It's just the question of those judgments which come up after 25 years of the law. That sends us the question mark and having such session. I think that firmness, if we get, everybody will shift next day to e-sign.
Okay, so one question that I'm getting is for the panelists. Which industries is it toughest to adopt e-signatures in? I'll open it to the panel. Please go ahead.
So my industry in entertainment, I see that because all contracts
Hmm.
of the actors, we sign it physically. Technicians, we sign it physically because that involves obviously high stake amount, which is there, creation of copyright, which is there, and global exploitation of the rights because whatever movies or anything is created is then sold to either OTT platform, etc. we don't want to run the risk of somebody coming out and saying that, exploitation of my copyright is question mark, please remove my identity from the content. So we make it a point to sign it physically. That's what I saw in my industry. In my previous company, Car of course, we had the opportunity of signing certain e-agreements. We were also shifting to a software where e-signatures was one of the great opportunities we had.
Thank you. And also, I'd just like to say thank you and bid adieu to Lakshika. I think she has to hop off for another commitment, but thank you for giving us an hour, Lakshika. Thank you for all your insights. And if you have any other questions specifically for you, I'll send them over to you and make sure that the people who asked it get their response.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Bye,
Nimit.
Lakshika.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you all. It was a great discussion. Thank you. See you. Bye.